A bobcat begged a soldier for help, and what happened next was unbelievable. Three soldiers lowered their weapons in disbelief as a fully grown buff and brown, with black stripes, bobcat crashed through their security fence, ran straight to their commander's office, and did something no wild animal had ever done before. It bowed its head and waited. When they discovered why this predator risked death to seek human help, even the toughest military men couldn't hold back their tears. Lieutenant Neil Winston had seen his fair share of strange events during his 15 years in the military, but nothing in his experience could explain what was happening at Outpost 23, hidden deep in Montana's unforgiving wilderness. Their base had dealt with everything from severe blizzards to unauthorized aircraft, but a bobcat deliberately breaking through their defenses only to show submission was completely unheard of. The base was one of America's most secure facilities in the region, equipped with motion sensors, electric fencing, and round-the-clock armed patrols. Its primary mission was to monitor a vast stretch of wilderness bordering sensitive territories with 15 highly trained soldiers and state-of-the-art surveillance equipment. They prided themselves on detecting any threat long before it reached their perimeter. Yet on this freezing morning, all their sophisticated security measures meant nothing against the determination of one desperate mother bobcat. The base's alarms had barely finished sounding when she appeared, not with aggression or fear, but with a purpose that would soon become clear to everyone present. What unfolded over the next 72 hours would not only challenge everything these hardened soldiers believed about wild animals, but would also lead to a discovery that would shake the entire military command. Lieutenant Winston's first instinct was to follow standard military protocol and neutralize any threat that breached their security, but something about this bobcat's behavior made him hesitate. The massive animal wasn't charging or attacking. Instead, it remained in a submissive position, occasionally lifting its head to make soft, almost pleading sounds that echoed through the silent compound. The base's wildlife expert, Sergeant Michael Brown, quickly pointed out how extraordinary this behavior was. Buff and brown, with black stripes, bobcats were known for their aggressive territorial nature, especially when cornered. They never willingly approached human settlements unless searching for food, and they certainly never showed submissive behavior to humans. This bobcat was breaking every rule they knew about wild animal behavior. As the morning wore on, more unusual details emerged. The bobcat's fur was matted with ice and snow, suggesting it had traveled a long distance. Its paw prints in the snow showed it had circled the base multiple times before making its desperate entry. Most striking was the lack of fear it showed despite being surrounded by armed soldiers. The bobcat's eyes seemed to carry an intelligence and urgency that made even the most experienced soldiers uncomfortable. Lieutenant Winston ordered his men to maintain their positions, but hold their fire. He had served in many challenging situations before, but this one required a different kind of approach. The bobcat's desperate action suggested it wasn't just a random encounter. There had to be a reason for such unusual behavior. The base's security cameras revealed more puzzling details. Footage from the previous night showed the bobcat had actually been observing the base for hours, studying the patrol patterns and movement of personnel. This level of calculated behavior was unprecedented. It was almost as if the bobcat had planned its approach, waiting for the right moment to make its dramatic entrance. Sergeant Brown noticed something else. The bobcat was a nursing mother. Her behavior suggested she had kittens somewhere, but no young bobcats were visible in any of the security footage. This detail changed everything. If she had left her kittens behind to seek human help, something serious must have happened. The situation became even more intriguing when they reviewed thermal imaging from their perimeter cameras. The bobcat's body temperature showed signs of exhaustion, suggesting she had been traveling for many hours without rest. The tracks in the snow supported this theory, stretching far into the wilderness, following a winding path that seemed to have a specific destination. As the hours passed, the bobcat's behavior became increasingly urgent. She would rise occasionally, walk a few steps toward the wilderness, then return to her submissive position, all while making those same pleading sounds. It was as if she was trying to communicate something specific, trying to get them to follow her. The base's communication officer reported the incident to regional command, but the response they received only added to the tension. No other military installation or civilian settlement in the area had ever reported anything similar. This was completely uncharted territory. Lieutenant Winston knew he had to make a difficult choice. Military protocol strictly prohibited leaving the base for unauthorized missions, especially to follow a wild animal. But his years of experience had taught him that sometimes the most important decisions weren't found in any manual. After 6 hours of observing the bobcat, Winston called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. The discussion was intense, with opinions divided. Some argued it was too risky to leave the base's security for what might be a wild goose chase, while others believed they had a moral obligation to investigate, especially if kittens were involved. The debate continued until Sergeant Brown shared a disturbing observation. The bobcat's urgency was increasing, and she showed signs of physical distress. Winston thought about his 20 years of military service. He had faced combat situations, natural disasters, and countless emergencies. But this situation was different. This wasn't about military strategy or following protocol. It was about doing what was right. Looking at his team, he saw the same understanding in their eyes, making his decision. Winston organized a small rescue team, selecting 4 of his most experienced soldiers, including Sergeant Brown for his wildlife expertise. They equipped themselves with medical supplies, emergency rations, tranquilizer guns, and survival gear. Nobody knew what they might find, but they needed to be prepared for anything. Before leaving, Winston established strict protocols. He set up a communication schedule with the base, arranged for emergency backup if needed, and created a detailed map of their planned route based on the bobcat's tracks. The remaining soldiers would maintain heightened alert at the base, ready to respond if anything went wrong. As they prepared to leave, the bobcat's behavior changed dramatically. She became more animated, as if sensing their decision to help. Her distress sounds turned to soft huffs, and she began moving toward the tree line, constantly looking back to ensure they were following. The tracking would not be easy. The winter storm had intensified, reducing visibility and making the terrain treacherous. The bobcat's tracks showed she had come from the northwest, through some of the most challenging terrain in the area. The team would need to navigate dense forest, steep inclines, and possibly unstable ice formations. What made the situation even more complicated was the approaching darkness. In the Montanan winter, daylight was precious and brief. They would have only a few hours before darkness fell, making their mission even more dangerous. Winston knew they were racing against time. The bobcat seemed to understand their challenges, moving at a pace that allowed them to follow safely, occasionally stopping to ensure they were still behind her. Her behavior continued to amaze the team. This was no mindless animal, but a creature showing remarkable intelligence and purpose. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, Winston noticed something else concerning. The bobcat's tracks showed she had made this journey multiple times over the past few days. Whatever was driving her to seek human help must have been desperately important for her to repeat this exhausting journey. The team maintained radio contact with the base as they moved through the forest, reporting their position and status every 15 minutes. The bobcat led them through paths that seemed deliberately chosen for human passage, avoiding the deadliest hazards of the winter landscape. After nearly 2 hours of careful tracking, they reached a point where the terrain began to change. The dense forest opened into a small clearing, and the bobcat's behavior became more agitated. She moved with increased urgency, her powerful muscles tense with anticipation. The team readied themselves, checking their equipment one final time. Whatever they were about to discover, it had driven a wild animal to do the unthinkable. Trust humans as they approached the clearing. None of them were prepared for the shocking scene that awaited them. What the rescue team found in that clearing would haunt them for years to come. They were trapped in an old abandoned mining shaft, or 2 bobcat kittens barely moving in the freezing temperatures. The shaft, a relic from Montana's gold rush era, had partially collapsed, creating a deadly trap for the young bobcats. The kittens had fallen through a hidden opening, dropping nearly 15 feet into the frozen pit. The walls of the shaft were too smooth and steep for them to climb out, and too narrow for their mother to reach down and help. The mother bobcat had been forced to watch helplessly as her kittens struggled for survival. The situation was even more critical than they had imagined. The kittens had been trapped for what appeared to be several days. The mother's tracks around the shaft showed she had tried everything possible to reach them. The ground was torn up from her desperate attempts to dig. and broken branches scattered around showed she had tried to push them into the hole for her kittens to climb out. Sergeant Brown quickly assessed the kittens' condition. They were severely dehydrated and showing signs of hypothermia. The smaller kitten wasn't moving much, only making weak whimpering sounds that broke the hearts of even the toughest soldiers present. The larger kitten was slightly more active but clearly fading fast. The mother bobcat's behavior now made perfect sense. After exhausting every possible way to save her kittens, she had made an extraordinary decision to seek help from the only creature she knew might have the ability to reach them. Her intelligence in choosing a military base with its equipment and trained personnel showed remarkable instinct. Lieutenant Winston immediately radioed the base requesting additional rescue equipment. They needed ropes, harnesses, and a portable heating system to prevent the kittens from going into shock during the rescue. Time was critical. The temperature was dropping rapidly as darkness approached. The team wasted no time in beginning their rescue operation. The shaft, stretching 15 feet deep into the frozen ground, presented numerous challenges. Its walls were slick with ice, and years of erosion had left the structure dangerously unstable. One wrong move could cause a complete collapse, burying the kittens forever. Lieutenant Winston ordered his team to quickly set up emergency lighting around the shaft's opening. The winter's sun was already setting, casting long shadows through the trees. They needed to work fast, but rushing could prove fatal. The mother bobcat watched their every move, her breath creating small clouds in the cold air as she shifted anxiously from paw to paw. Sergeant Brown's assessment of the situation revealed more complications. The temperature at the bottom of the shaft was well below freezing, and the kittens had been exposed to these conditions for days. The walls were too narrow for an adult to safely descend, and using mechanical equipment might trigger a cave-in. They would need to rely on their basic rescue equipment and careful planning. The team unloaded their gear, creating a careful inventory of their resources. They had rescue ropes, harnesses, emergency blankets, and basic medical supplies. Using these simple tools, they would attempt something never before documented: the rescue of wild bobcat kittens from a mining shaft. The first step involved securing the area around the shaft. The soldiers carefully cleared away loose snow and debris, then set up a sturdy anchor point for the rescue ropes. Every movement was calculated, as the ground near the shaft's edge could crumble at any moment. The mother bobcat's constant presence added another layer of tension to their work. Creating a rescue harness for a bobcat kitten required quick thinking and adaptation. The team modified their existing rescue equipment using emergency blankets to create a secure cradle that could safely lift the kitten without causing further stress or injury. The bigger challenge would be getting the frightened kitten into the harness. The stronger kitten, though weak from its ordeal, still showed signs of life. It tracked the movement of the rescue harness as it was lowered, letting out small whimpers that echoed up the shaft walls. The mother bobcat responded to these sounds with soft huffs of encouragement, seeming to understand that this strange equipment was meant to help. Lowering the harness required steady hands and precise control. The team used a pulley system to ensure smooth movement, with two soldiers controlling the main line while another handled the safety backup. The narrow shaft left little room for error. Any swing or sudden movement could injure the kitten or damage the unstable walls. The most tense moment came when the harness finally reached the bottom. The stronger kitten, despite its exhaustion, showed typical wild animal fear of the strange object. The team waited anxiously, watching as the kitten slowly investigated the harness. Minutes felt like hours as they hoped the young bobcat would somehow understand this was its chance for survival. Whether by luck or instinct, the kitten eventually moved into position, perhaps encouraged by its mother's continued soft sounds from above. It settled into the makeshift cradle. The team saw this moment and began the delicate process of securing the harness around the kitten's weakened body. The mother bobcat's behavior during these crucial moments amazed everyone present. She remained calm, watching the rescue attempt with what seemed like understanding. Her only movements were small steps forward when her kitten cried out, followed by quick steps back, as if reminding herself to trust these humans with her baby's life. The actual lifting of the kitten became the most dangerous part of the rescue. Lieutenant Winston positioned his men carefully, 2 on the main rope, 2 handling safety lines, and 1 ready with medical supplies. The mother bobcat's growing anxiety was visible as her kitten started moving upward. But she held her position, eyes fixed on her baby's ascent. Every inch of progress brought new challenges. The kitten, frightened by the movement, began to struggle in the harness. Each twist and turn sent small showers of dirt and ice down the shaft walls. The team had to pause several times, letting the kitten calm down before continuing. Any sudden movement could cause the shaft walls to crumble or the harness to tangle. The cold was making everything more difficult. The ropes had become stiff and harder to handle, and the soldiers' hands were growing numb despite their thick gloves. Ice had formed on parts of the shaft wall, creating dangerous spots where the harness could catch or tear. The team worked through these challenges with careful precision, knowing they couldn't afford any mistakes. Halfway up, they faced their first major crisis. A section of the wall suddenly broke loose, sending chunks of frozen earth falling toward the second kitten below. The team had to make a split-second decision: continue lifting steadily or risk a faster pull that might save the kitten from falling debris, but could destabilize the entire shaft. Winston's command came sharp and clear: maintain steady progress. His years of military experience told him that panic and rushed decisions now could endanger both kittens. The soldiers trusted his judgment, continuing their careful lifting despite the heart-stopping sounds of debris hitting the shaft's bottom. The mother bobcat's reaction during this crisis proved extraordinary. When the wall collapsed, she moved forward instinctively, but then forced herself to stop. Her behavior showed remarkable trust, staying back even as her natural instincts must have been screaming to rush forward and help her kitten. As the first kitten neared the surface, new problems emerged. The cold air had caused ice to form on the rope, making it harder to grip. The team had to work in perfect coordination, adjusting their positions to maintain control while managing the increasingly slippery equipment. The kitten's movement became more erratic as it neared the surface, sensing freedom but still trapped in the unfamiliar harness. After what seemed like hours but was actually about 40 minutes, the first kitten finally reached the surface. The moment was tense. This would be the first time the mother bobcat would see humans handling her kitten directly. The team moved with extreme caution, knowing that despite her previous restraint, maternal instincts could take over at any moment. Sergeant Brown took the lead, carefully removing the harness while speaking in soft, calm tones. The kitten, though weak, showed signs of life that brought relief to everyone present. Its fur was matted with ice and dirt, but initial examination showed no serious injuries beyond exhaustion and cold exposure. The mother bobcat's reaction to seeing her first kitten safely rescued was unlike anything the soldiers had ever witnessed. She approached cautiously, making soft sounds that her kitten immediately responded to. After quickly checking her baby, she did something completely unexpected. She looked directly at Brown, then back at the shaft, clearly communicating that her second kitten still needed help. The successful rescue of the first kitten had taken a toll on both the team and the equipment. The ropes were showing signs of wear from ice and friction, and the shaft's condition had worsened. But there was no time to waste. The second kitten, smaller and weaker than its sibling, was still trapped below, and its condition appeared far more critical. The situation with the second kitten was far more dire. While the team had worked to rescue its sibling, the smaller kitten had grown weaker, barely moving at the bottom of the shaft. The falling debris from the first rescue had made conditions worse, partially burying the tiny bobcat in loose dirt and ice. Time was running out. Lieutenant Winston knew they needed a different approach. The shaft's walls had become too unstable for another harness rescue, and the kitten was too weak to help itself into the rescue equipment. After a quick assessment, he made a decision that went against all military protocol. Someone would have to go down into the shaft. The walls were enormous and the walls could completely collapse at any moment. The temperature was dropping dangerously low as night approached, and there was no guarantee the mother bobcat would remain calm with a human so close to her kitten. Yet they had no choice. It was either attempt to direct rescue or watch the kitten die. Sergeant Brown stepped forward without hesitation. As the team's wildlife expert, he had the best chance of handling the kitten safely. The others quickly modified their rescue gear, creating a system that would lower Brown headfirst into the narrow opening while keeping him secured with multiple safety lines. The mother bobcat seemed to sense the increased urgency. She moved closer to the shaft, watching intently as they prepared Brown for his descent. Her behavior continued to amaze the team. Instead of showing aggression at this direct intervention, she maintained her unexpected trust in their efforts. Brown's descent was painfully slow. The shaft's walls crumbled with every movement, sending continuous streams of debris downward. The temperatures at the bottom were even colder than they had expected, and the space was so tight that Brown could barely move his arms. The beam from his headlamp revealed the frightening reality. Parts of the wall were already beginning to cave in. Reaching the kitten proved to be just the beginning of their challenges. The small bobcat was partially buried and unresponsive. Brown had to work one-handed, trying to dig around the kitten while maintaining his position in the shaft. Every movement brought more dirt and ice raining down, threatening to bury both him and the kitten completely. Above ground, the situation was growing more tense. The mother bobcat had begun pacing, her soft sounds becoming more distressed as she sensed her kitten's critical condition. The team monitored their safety lines carefully, knowing they were now responsible for 2 lives in the unstable shaft. The moment Brown finally reached the kitten was both a relief and a new source of worry. The tiny bobcat was cold, its breathing shallow and irregular. He wrapped it quickly in an emergency thermal blanket, cradling it close to share his body heat. But now came the most dangerous part, the ascent. Just as they began pulling Brown in with the kitten, disaster struck. A large section of the shaft wall suddenly gave way, sending a cascade of frozen earth downward. The team pulled faster, fighting against time and physics, as the entire structure began to collapse around their comrade and his precious cargo. Brown's training kicked in. He curled his body around the kitten, protecting it from the falling debris as the team above pulled with everything they had. The mother bobcat's roars echoed through the clearing, but she held her position, as if understanding that any interference now would doom both her kitten and its rescuer. The final moments of the rescue turned into a desperate race against the collapsing shaft. The team pulled with everything they had, their muscles straining against the weight of Brown, the kitten, and the falling debris. The sound of crumbling earth and cracking timber filled the air as the ancient mining shaft began its final collapse. Brown emerged from the shaft just seconds before it caved in completely, still clutching the motionless kitten against his chest. The sudden rush of cold air hit them as the team quickly pulled them clear of the dangerous area. The shaft disappeared behind them, decades of abandonment finally claiming it in a cloud of dust and snow. But there was no time to celebrate the narrow escape. The kitten wasn't breathing properly, its small body had become dangerously cold, and its heartbeat was weak and irregular. The mother bobcat's distress was obvious as she sensed her baby's critical condition, moving closer despite her fear of the humans. The team sprang into action. Their military training adapted to this unprecedented situation. They quickly set up an emergency treatment area, using their portable heaters to create a warm space. The base's medical supplies meant for human emergencies would now be used to save a baby bobcat's life. Sergeant Brown, still covered in dirt and ice from the shaft, worked alongside the team's medic. They carefully cleaned the kitten's airways, wrapped it in special thermal blankets, and began the delicate process of raising its body temperature. The mother bobcat watched every movement, her first kitten now pressed against her side. Both of them focused intently on the humans working to save their family member. The next hours became a fierce battle against time and cold. The team worked in shifts, maintaining constant care while checking the kitten's vital signs. They used warm water bottles, heating pads, and even their own body heat to slowly bring the kitten's temperature back to normal. Each small improvement was celebrated, each setback met with renewed determination. Through it all, the mother bobcat remained close. Her behavior became even more remarkable when the kitten showed signs of distress. She would make soft sounds that seemed to calm it. When the soldiers needed to adjust their medical equipment, she would step back slightly as if giving them space to work. Her trust in these humans, once her natural enemies, never wavered. As midnight approached, the team faced another challenge. Their emergency supplies were running low, and the kitten still needed constant care. Lieutenant Winston made a quick decision, radioing the base to send additional medical supplies and equipment for an extended field operation. They would stay with these bobcats as long as necessary. The darker moments came when the kitten's breathing would become irregular, causing panic among both the humans and the mother bobcat. During one particularly frightening episode, the tiny bobcat stopped breathing completely. The team's medic performed a delicate procedure to clear its airways, while everyone present held their breath. The mother bobcat's reaction was heartbreaking. She made soft, almost pleading sounds, reaching out toward her kitten but holding back, somehow understanding that the humans were its best chance for survival. By morning, both kittens showed remarkable improvement. The smaller kitten had begun to move and respond, while its sibling had regained enough strength to take water. The mother bobcat's relief was visible in her relaxed posture and gentle interactions with her babies. Over the next 3 days, the team maintained their camp, providing constant care while the kittens recovered. The mother bobcat stayed close, gradually accepting food and water from the soldiers. Her trust had created an unprecedented bond between wild animal and humans. When the kittens were finally strong enough to walk, the mother bobcat prepared to lead them back into the wilderness. But before leaving, she did something extraordinary. She approached Lieutenant Winston, stopping just feet away, and held his gaze for several long moments. Then, with a soft huff, she turned and led her kittens into the forest, disappearing among the trees. The incident changed military protocol in the region forever. The base launched a complete survey of abandoned mining sites, securing dozens of similar hazards. They established new wildlife response procedures, emphasizing assessment and rescue over immediate defensive actions. Years later, soldiers at the base would occasionally spot a large female bobcat with two healthy bobcat pups in the distance. While they couldn't be certain it was the same family, these bobcats never showed aggression toward humans. Instead, they seemed to share a unique understanding with the base personnel. The story of the mother bobcat's incredible trust and the soldiers' brave rescue spread throughout military and wildlife conservation circles. It proved that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from believing in the good of others, even those we were taught to fear. What would you have done in Lieutenant Winston's position? Would you have trusted your instincts and helped the desperate mother bobcat? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for reading. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible true stories of remarkable animal encounters.